somebody whose son was red pilled like 3 or 4 years ago, I feel like it's really important for me to speak up and speak out about how exactly I managed to deprogram him from that, but also gave him the critical thinking skills in order to not end up down the pipeline again. I feel like it's important to note that I do have education in sociology, psychology and law, so I've got cracking debate skills, right? And we were capable of really sitting and having conversations about it as well, because we do have a really good strong relationship, and obviously all of that comes into play when it comes to me educating him on things. A lot of the conversation that we had was like kind, compassionate, open and respectful. I did not want to be that parent that was like, you're not going to engage with that, that's horrible, you're horrible, that's disrespectful, whatever. I wasn't going to do that. I wanted to understand exactly what it was about that content that engaged him, what it was that, you know, drew him in, what he was identifying with, what he believed. Was there anything he didn't believe in? Was there anything he disagreed with? You know, I went through all of it and I really tried to understand his ideology and where it was coming from, because the truth is, right, this ideology is a seed and it gets planted in a kid's head, and then over time it just festers. And the problem with it is it's propaganda fed. So what everybody has to understand before we even go into this kind of conversation is that everybody, as a baseline, is raised in a in a society that is inherently racist, misogynistic, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, all of that. Like, this is dark undercurrent for every single one of us, because we were all born into and brought up in this society where we were like exposed to these toxic kind of behaviors. And I know a lot of people are trying to deconstruct them actively at the minute, but at the end of the day, for an 11-year-old child that is literally just, you know, coming into his own, he's just got on TikTok and he's immediately being fed this horrendous information that I will come back to in a minute, actually. It's quite difficult to have the necessary critical thinking skills in order to not let that linger. Whereas, you know, now hopefully because he's got those skills, he'll be able to like keep himself away from that content, or at least if he comes into contact with it, he'll be able to engage with it in a much more productive and much more mindful way, which is the important.
So basically, you know, the narrative is that we have to continue to feed the real propaganda and the real material into our sons, or not into my sons, into their sons, or in our community, in her community, so that they ultimately become extreme, raging liberal feminists. Because everything that she described that she actually rock out with, that she thinks that everybody else is or has a phobia about, which nobody is scared of any of this stuff. We just don't necessarily agree with it. And so masculinity is inherent. That's why he sought it out. That's why it was just natural for him to ultimately go down that rabbit hole to truly understand what a man is. And part of what I hear missing in this conversation so far is, where's the father? Where's the father? How come the father is not playing a stronger role in this child's life? Because if he did, and if he were in this child's life, which then just reflects on the woman and the fact that she can't pick correctly, or she can't identify the person that she was supposed to have children with. And again, I'm only going based off of the surface level conversations that she's having right now. He wouldn't be seeking it out because it's inherently in you to look towards masculinity as a man, and even to look towards masculinity as a woman for a covering, so that you ultimately become the person that you're supposed to be able to protect your family and not get finessed in society, in the family courts and all of this stuff. But let's continue to hear what she has to say.
Important thing. Now, to go back to the other thing, we was driving home actually today about 4 hours ago, and he said to me the reason that he bought into it anyway was because the first videos that came up on his timeline, on his FYP, whatever you want to call it, were like quite palatable. And he sort of could buy into it. He could understand why men was saying that. And he was like, yeah, you know, it really made sense to me. Like, I could really identify with it. And he was like, and then it got a little bit darker. And I was like, oh, I'm not sure whether I believe that. But because, you know, I already trust these men and they were right about the other stuff and I believe them on the other stuff, so I should trust them here. And that's where it gets you, because it is predatory in nature. We all know that. But that's how propaganda works as well, is it appeals to these dark undercurrents that we have, the sexism, the misogyny, the racism, the transphobia, the homophobia, all of it all of it appeals to something, and then that will begin to fester and it will start to bleed into other areas of your life, which is exactly what this does, which is why it fundamentally will change the trajectory of your child's life if you do not get it out root and stem, right? You'll have to get that seed out, and you have to give them the tools in order to keep it out as well. And so part of this was literally just me sitting and having an engaging conversation with him about exactly why it is that it appealed to him. After that, though, I did start pulling on the relationships that he has with women in his real life. And this is particularly good for me because he was primarily raised by women. I'd say about 5% influence from men. The rest of it was women. It was like me and my mum and my stepmom. And then my grandparents, like my grandma. So, like, we're talking grandmas, great-grandmas, aunties, cousins. There's so many of us, and we're all...
And now you see where the problem lies. It's easy for them to feminize this guy or to tell him how he's supposed to think as a man with a woman's philosophy because he has no influences in his life that then forces him to then question whether or not this woman is actually giving him the right information. Just because people have kids don't necessarily mean that they're given the right information on how you're supposed to become a man. And no woman can actually raise a man to be a man. It has to have some level of masculinity in his life because then he just becomes a raging liberal feminist, similar to what we hear right now. She just admitted that probably less than 5% of his influence come from men. That's dangerous. That is incredibly dangerous. You can never have a woman teach a man how he's supposed to look at life because you can't understand it. You've never been through it. You don't know what he's going to have to suffer through. Men and women are completely different. Men need to suffer. Women need to subject themselves to the covering of a man so that they don't find themselves trying to compete against us and losing. Feel so sorry.
all women,
So sorry.
right? And he has literally had so much influence from women. I was kind
All
of offended that he
women.
would buy into that
Broke.
sort of ideology about women, but he hadn't applied it to us. So we would sit and watch a video, and I would be like, okay, so how would you feel if I was sat in that seat? And he was saying those things to me because he had a piece of paper in front of him that said, I was an OF model. You know I'm not. I know I'm not. But it's told, that sheet of paper's told him I am. So how would you feel if he spoke to me like that? Just because of some information he's got on a piece of paper in front of him. Like, it don't mean anything. And he'd be like, oh, no, I don't like that. Like, I would be really mad about that. He shouldn't talk to you like that. And I was like, well, she's someone's daughter. She could be someone's mum. She's someone's auntie. Like, he shouldn't be talking to her like that. Like, it's nothing to do with him. They're sat in a podcast, mate. They're not on a date. They're not about to go out. Like, she's not looking for love with him. She's just on a podcast. Right? And that's when we started going to the conversation of, okay, so why do you think he's saying stuff like that? Because he's talking about body count, right? Internally for him, where do you think he's coming from with that? Why do you think he would ask a question like that? Why do you think that would be important to him? And we would have those kinds of conversations where I would really make him think about what other people were thinking and feeling, because I do think that emotional intelligence and empathy massively come into play with these two things. And I'm very, very lucky that I have a child who is emotionally well balanced. I'm not gonna lie, like, he is a very, very well balanced, great child. Genuinely, I was so shocked that he was red pill, but it is what it is. And I know it's going to be harder for other people, but it starts with compassion and respect and understanding, where you actually like come at it from a place of, okay, I want to know why you feel this way, and then let's expand on it. So when I started, getting him to be like, oh, well, maybe that guy's insecure, maybe he's insecure about his own body and like what he can give to her, like, and if she's had other people, then obviously he's got to try and measure up. And we would go through that, and it was uncomfortable sometimes, but we would speak about it anyway. And now we talk about pretty much anything, and he still comes to me with that content, and we will still like dissect why a man...
If he was interested in it, I don't think I need to see any more of this. It is what it is. If he already had an instinct to chase it out or to mine it out and an interest in it, it's not gonna go away. Even if she tries to feminize him, and it's a strong possibility that she can influence him the other way. But it's not going, his desire to ultimately be what he's supposed to be as a man is never going to go away. It's just going to continue to linger and fester until he feels that gap, he feels that need, and hopefully he finds himself in it. And it's unfortunate because a lot of these women are raising these boys to be super feminine and weak. But let me know what y'all think inside of the comments. Always link back to the content creator so that I can make sure that I give them credit. I love you. I appreciate you. I'm going to holler at you later. Peace.